how they are actually poisoning young children in India through the school system. Christian globalism, which wants to create a Christian state, Christian world. And you have the Khalifat globalism. Khalifat is a globalism. It's a globalism system which says the whole world should be under Sharia. That's a globalist model. As we mentioned in this book, the educational policies, some of these educational policies that we are criticizing are not based on Indian values. And that has been brought everywhere. Everyone in Mumbai, all these industrialists are very proud championing ESG, DEI. So there's an index. Consumerism is not sustainable. But nobody wants to attack that because that's bad for business. Environmentalism is all about making sure that industrial raw material doesn't run out, energy, fossil fuels don't run out, we don't pollute, so it'll be bad for our health. It's all human-centric. It's not nature-centric. So our culture is that nature has her own legitimacy, rights. According to our values, the meat industry should have a negative, huge problem because of the way they treat animals. The pharma industry, the way they treat animals for medical testing is horrible. The educational wokeism into India from the UN side and various other NGOs learn from peers what is the latest trend and this and that. And these apps have got a whole lot of sexuality education, and these woke ideas are spread out. And there is a lot of AI being used to educate, brainwash, make it exciting, make it entertaining, make it fantasy, come up with all these videos, clips and all. They're very personalized. So the new technology of apps and AI and so on is only making this worse because the parents are, who's raising your children? It's also these apps. It's also the social media. It's also this AI. Namaste and thank you for inviting me. And I see a lot of alert, bright faces, and I'm looking forward to a good interaction with you. So what I want to do is give you a broad picture of the background and the context of this book because you haven't read it, so I'll give you that. And then from there we'll go into more details. And this will set the stage for interaction. I look forward to good questions and tough questions, and we can all learn from each other. I'll learn from you also. So now, when I do research, my background as a physicist influences my approach. In physics, you have the theoretical physicist who likes to theorize and come up with big theories and models on how things behave. And then there is the experimental physicist who comes up with many, many measurements and examples, and the two have to work together. If you have a theory and then the experimental physicist comes up with data which doesn't fit the theory, you have to reject the theory. You cannot reject the data because that's what it is. It's evidence. In the case of law, because we have a prominent prosecutor here, the evidence has to fit the theory you are presenting. And the other side is going to shoot down and say, no, this evidence presents different theory. So the theoretical and the empirical data have to be consistent. So in writing a book, is a kind of investigation. Actually, I'm very glad you're here because it's a good way for me to explain. It's kind of investigative work on an area of some topic. And I've done many of these from a Bharatiya point of view. So when you are doing this investigation, you come up with a lot of data. And it's interesting that a lot of people know the data already, so that discovery of the data is not anything new necessarily. But connecting the dots into a theoretical framework is what distinguishes your contribution. Because you've come up with a thesis that explains this data. And then this thesis has to be tested to make sure that it is valid. You have to test it against lots of examples, lots of data to see if it makes sense. So there is a top-down process of constructing a framework which requires a lot of imagination, inspiration, meditative inspiration that, suddenly you say, aha, I now know and understand all of this. And then there is a bottom up where you have data, evidence. So this book, like all the others I've done, I've published 16 books so far. And I have another 20 books to publish, 20 more in the works. It actually works. Not that I'm starting they're all, you see, when you are investigating a lot of things, you keep discovering some new item here, new evidence here. And then you have to say, okay, where does it fit? It fits in that particular framework. It's like, suppose you were investigating not one crime, but a whole example of many, many crimes. And, when you find some evidence, it may fit into this crime or it may fit into that investigation. You don't know. We have to keep trying, figure out how it fits. So I'm parallel investigating many things about our civilization, about the West, about what has been misrepresented, about what has been appropriated, misappropriated, about our own foolishness, all kind of things for the last 35 years. So in parallel, I have opened up many folders. I have a huge library of online folders, about 250,000 files that I have got. And so they keep getting organized into this book folder, that book folder. And then I sometimes say, okay, now this actually belongs in that place. Or this should be broken into 2 books because it's too big. Like that, it goes on. So in that sense, my work is all parallel. It's not like I finish one, then start the other. I'm also working on 10 other things. So that is why I'm saying that I have to finish another 20 books in the next few years, because I've been working on these for a very long time. And what happens is when many, many books come out, then the overall picture becomes clear because they're related. Otherwise, people say, okay, now you're talking about Hinduism. Why you written this book on artificial intelligence? आपको तो Hinduism के बारे में सूझना चाहिए. आप AI की बात कर रहे हैं. आपको क्या मालूम है? The point is, I was a computer scientist and my topic was AI. Long back before there was a field called AI, we were doing this kind of thing ahead of its time. And the point is, it's very related to the future of our civilization, the future of narratives, the future of education, the future of who controls the discourse. So when I started writing about AI in 2017, people didn't realize that this is why it is important. So I was attacked as कि आप ये क्या कर रहे हैं, कभी AI के बारे में लिखते हैं, कभी ये लिखते हैं, क्या करते हैं, not understanding that this all fits nicely. So that's why I have to finish the rest of my books, publish them, because then it makes everything clearer. You see. Now this book talks about how. So first I'll tell you this, that my books can be classified broadly into those that are disruptive and those that are constructive. Disruptive is that there are forces that are harming us. So to use a medical term, disruptive would be that there are germs, viruses, and you want to disrupt them, get rid of them, finish them off. That is disruptive. And then the constructive is you want to give good nutrition, keep healthy, not eliminate anything, but bring in good things. So the constructive is the bringing good things about our culture. We've written 14 volumes on history of Indian science and technology as an example. We've translated many volumes of what the Buddhists had in Nalanda, which the Tibetans took. And Nalanda was destroyed, but the Dalai Lama brought it back. So we're translating some of that. So that's a constructive. So there are many constructive things we do and there are disruptive things we do. So in the disruptive category where we are criticizing, this book is part of that. One of the big themes we came up with is called Hindu phobia, which is a term that I started in the 90s and now it's become very popular. Another theme within disruptive is breaking India, which is also a term I coined. I wrote a book with that title. So the breaking India theme, this is volume 3 that we are releasing. This is volume 3 of the Breaking India theme. The volume 1 was basically talking about how foreign forces are intervening in India, in the villages, in the poor areas of India, where, they're trying to create bhed and divisiveness. Dravidians versus Aryans, so there's north-south divide. The big Dalit divide. You see, Maoists coming, Christians, missionaries converting. So these are all divisive breaking India forces. They break the unity of the the fabric of Bharat. So that was Breaking India 1.0. The target of that Breaking India forces was poor people, less educated people, vulnerable people. Then the second Breaking India was Snakes in the Ganga, which talked about not poor people, not village people, but Indians in Harvard, Indians in TIS, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Indians in various colleges, in all over you have these prestigious liberal arts colleges, Ashoka, that kind of place. So the theme there, Breaking India 2.0, was how these Breaking India forces are destroying the future leaders of the country who go to these Ivy Leagues, who come from great homes. Their parents are well off and they are influential people. They are influential people. They are leaders of tomorrow. So they are doing this in places like World Economic Forum, Harvard, these liberal arts colleges. And they are promoting things like Khalistan. They are promoting things like Kashmir separatism. They are promoting all these kind of things and poisoning our young minds. And what I pointed out is that there is a Mahindra Center at Harvard. What is their work? Their work is not pro-India in Harvard. I pointed out that they are following the left-wing trend to bring troublemakers and make a lot of sensational noise against India and condemn India and all that. So that from there, that intellectual contribution goes to the US Congress, US Senate, then they pass all these resolutions that India doesn't have human rights, then it goes to international agencies. So all of it starts in the academic think tanks. And then we talked about, in that book, we also talked about there's a Mittal Center for South Asia Studies, but you look at who are the speakers. I mean, there's no way they'll ever allow me in there or the Mahindra Center or even be able to ask a question because they know that this guy is going to disrupt their work. So they are basically very carefully curated and controlled who will speak, what they'll speak on, and to create a sort of knowledge which is sort of very authentic sounding and brainwash a lot of people, not only our people there, but all the Westerners, all the people who come from around the world because the credibility is so high. So if the Breaking India forces have captured the highest reputation universities, they have accomplished something because now from there they can spread a lot of poison against us. So that is Breaking India 2.0. And then Breaking India 3.0, which is this book, says how they are actually poisoning young children in India through the school system. So this is K through 12. So this is a different kind of Breaking India. This is Breaking India by weaponizing our own children against our heritage through the kind of curriculum, through the kind of, pedagogy that they have. So that's the positioning. That's how this book is positioned. Now, the forces, the question is, who are these forces? Broadly speaking, you can call them globalists. Globalists, not just people like George Soros, but also Omi Diyar, also World Economic Forum has a whole lot of them. They are basically people who have a kind of Marxist philosophy that nationalism is something wrong, bad, because, nation states, nationalism creates wars and all that stuff. Not only it creates trouble with the neighborhood, with others, but nationalism also oppresses a lot of people because nationalism is sort of bad thing. And so this globalist, nice talk that we should be all one and global, this and that. But, China is not interested in disarming its nation. The United States does not want to get rid of nationalism. They're very proud of the founding fathers, of the value of the dollar. I mean, they're very patriotic. France is very patriotic. Russia is very patriotic. The Arab countries are very clear about who they are. Why we are trying to prove ourselves to other people that by saying that we can get rid of our nationalism and become global. So this is the whole agenda of these globalists. But globalists also are multiple kinds in competing globalists. There is certainly the Western left-wing globalism, which is very Marxist oriented. But then you have a Christian globalism, which wants to create a Christian state, Christian world. And you have the Khalifat globalism. Khalifat is a globalism. It's a globalism system which says the whole world should be under Sharia. That's a globalist model. And then you have Chinese who want their Belt and Road Initiative to be the globalism for running the world. This is a vision of how the world should run, with them, of course, being at the top. So there are competing globalisms also. So one can ask, where is the Bharatiya globalism? Do we have a globalism? And where is it? Is it taught in the pedagogy? Is it what the media is reflecting? Is it what policies are based on? So we are a hodgepodge. We talk about IKS, but as we mentioned in this book, the educational policies, some of these educational policies that we are criticizing are not based on Indian values. There is IKS in a corner somewhere as a separate subject. But when they are teaching, sociology, when they're teaching anthropology, when they're teaching history, when they are teaching, all these other subjects, they seem to be getting these ideas from the West. But there is IKS also somewhere, but there is all this other stuff also somewhere. So this IKS should not be like a ghetto somewhere on the corner. It should permeate all the subjects. You have an IKS approach to, whatever, science or whatever, mind sciences, psychology. IKS has to be part of all these departments and not something separate from it. And we are pointing out that when it comes to educational pedagogy, it is not based on Vedic values, on Vedic philosophy. It is based on imported models of education. So this is a disconnect we have in our own scheme of things. Now, we also point out the globalist agendas of breaking India for children and education. There are many conduits. It's coming through conduits. So there are these international NGOs like Planned Parenthood, like that, various ones we are mentioning here. And they come and sometimes work with the state government, like Jharkhand is a case study we've done in this book of the effect on tribals in education, that is foreign funded, foreign coming in. And NITI Aayog is party to all this. NITI Aayog is a sort of a gateway to India for the globalists. It's like the welcome mat for globalists. Globalists welcome, and we will take you to wherever and help you facilitate everything. So a lot of the policies are written by McKinsey and, Price Waterhouse and Ernst & Young and Boston Consulting Group and Booz Allen and whatnot. I mean, I'm not anything against them, but I'm saying that we don't have Bharatiya our own views on those things. Take, for example, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, which is a woke concept. And that has been brought everywhere. Everyone in Mumbai, all these industrialists are very proud championing ESG, DEI. So there's an index which these consulting companies are evaluating your company based on their idea of sustainability, their idea of diversity. These are not Indian ideas. We mentioned that. So, for instance, sustainability, sustainability and equity, social justice, governance. These are the criteria they are using is not made in India. It's made somewhere else. So the rules of the game are from somewhere else. You're playing the game, but somebody is making the rules. The referees are from somewhere else who evaluate. Okay. So you are, in a sense, colonized by these indexes because it's not something that we originated. And we don't have a whole lot to say. I don't know of any industrialist who stood up and said, I don't like this particular criteria for measuring my DEI. We have our own idea of what is diversity. And we are the most diverse place there is. So we will teach you about diversity according to our view. So that kind of confidence our people don't have. And so we've brought in these diversity type ideas and just accepted them. And I have a whole chapter on the Indian idea of diversity and tables comparing. This is the DEI woke idea, and this is the diversity that we would have. So if you look at the education, we also have a whole chapter on it's called the Vedic philosophy of education. called that way. It's a 40-50 page chapter. It's a very detailed chapter on how we would, according to our tradition, approach the education of children, and how it is different from these imported models that are being brought in. So you would think that this would be this book would be one of the most important books that the IKS people would champion, but we don't even have any interest, because this is not called IKS; it's called something else. So it's also there's also a kind of a limited jargon view that we have in this country. This is an IKS book because it's talking about it's a comparative study, a Purva Paksha on Western education compared to IKS education. It's basically like that. But there's not we've done many launches, wonderful launches, Ratanji, many others in Delhi we did. But there is silence on the part of the NITI Aayog people, the ORF people, and the these IKS people, because they're protecting their turf and defending and being very so as if we are doing something wrong. So now let's talk about sustainability, development, diversity, social justice, etc. These are some of the main concepts of education. And comprehensive sexualizing education, which we talk about in this book, which we think is a serious problem in the way they are doing it. Sustainability, we have the whole concept of farming, the way we do it is sustainable, the whole concept of recycling, the whole concept of not too much consumerism, because so much consumerism is not sustainable. If you look at the per capita consumption of an American, in terms of how much he consumes of various things, energy and the material he consumes, and if you say all 8 billion people per capita will consume that way, you will need 5 or 6 planets to get so much raw material. You won't be able to do it. So obviously, the Western idea of consumerism is not sustainable. But nobody wants to attack that, because that's bad for business. Because unless you increase consumption, your share value is not going to go up. So on the one hand, you're talking about sustainability. On the other hand, you're not willing to touch this idea of consumption, and creating a society where the consumption is sort of balanced with what the earth can manage. So sustainability is more about, as interpreted now, it's more about making sure that we don't run out of fossil fuels, we don't destroy the water because the fish will die, is bad for the fishing industry. The reason for not polluting the water isn't because the fish have life and fish have rights. It's not because we respect the earth having rights, the way that is our tradition, that Mother Earth has rights. And so the sustainability is we have to respect the rights of Mother Earth. Not that Earth is our property and we don't want to damage property. कि आपकी property में कुछ damage हो जाएगा तो उसको environmentalism is all about making sure that industrial raw material doesn't run out, energy, fossil fuels don't run out, we don't pollute so it will be bad for our health. It's all human-centric. It's not nature-centric. So our culture is that nature has her own legitimacy, rights. It's not that nature is man's property and we are protecting it so that we are not damaging our property. It's not that nature is our property at all. Nature is not man's property. So the starting point, the premise is different. The premise of nature's rights is very different than the premise of nature as property. So it tells you where the sustainability goes. And also they have these indexes of ethics, all kind of indexes. So I asked them that, okay, according to our values, the meat industry should have a negative, huge problem because of the way they treat animals. The pharma industry, the way they treat animals for medical testing is horrible. There's no cameras allowed, there's no rating, nobody questions that because it's going to be bad for the share price of the pharma industry and they're very powerful people. So, all this is a hoax. So when they tell you that we're going to rate you and this is your rating, you need to have the courage to talk back and say, okay, where did you get your index from? And why don't you consider our values? I mean, we have a lot of good Hindus, lot of Jains I've talked to, they're very concerned, very sensitive in their Jain philosophy, which is very good. Jain philosophy, very concerned about the rights of all the animals, all the nature and all that. And yet, when they're corporate industry, when they're as an industrialist, they change the hat, turn on a different switch, and here comes these people who are evaluating their sustainability, giving them a rating, and suddenly they are going along with that also. So there's a double life. It's a contradiction. It's a bit of a hypocrisy. There was something called Dharma Index about 30 years ago, 20 or some years ago. The Dow Jones and the Financial Times of London, and one or two others, started something called Islamic Index, because Muslims were having a lot of money, Arabs had a lot of money, and they wanted to invest in the Western world. But they said we want it to be Sharia compliant, so we don't invest in things that are not good for Islam. Very sensible. They should do that. So they created an Islamic Index and said we will evaluate all the companies in the Western world according to Islamic Index, and then the Arabs will invest only where it is good, high index. And this way, everybody will try to conform to the... So if they want halal, not haram, then, that will determine your value, your rating. So this is Islamic Index. And then somebody said, okay, we should have a Dharma Index also. So I was approached by Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who is no more now. He said that there is this proposal, what do you think? So and so has joined. Many gurus joined that we're going to champion it, because gurus, like anything American, they say, Dharma Index sounds good, hum bhi jayenge. So I looked at the content of Dharma Index. The content of Dharma Index is not about Dharma at all. So I said that, look, for instance, if you have a rating, these are the criteria for being good, these are criteria for being bad. It is not anything to do with the yam niyam of our system. It is not to do with vegetarianism. It's not to do with animal rights. It's not to do with so many things that we consider important. You have to redo the whole thing. So I told Swamiji, and he says, okay, cancel. We're not going to get involved in this. Cancel it. And the Dharma Index was dropped. That project did not even get off the ground because we complained. So you see, this DEI stuff has not had enough pushback from our leaders who should be pushing back. Development. Now, United Nations, when the UN in the 50s, when we started in all the 40s, 50s, 60s, it always focused on development, developing economies, underdeveloped, whatever, because the idea was that so many countries are poor, we should develop them. That was the model. And then there was a new thing added, that is sustainability. That, if they burn coal, if the developing countries burn coal to get the energy they need, then it's bad for the environment. So we need sustainable development. So this idea of compromise was made that we need development, we need sustainability. So they called it sustainable development. And then into the sustainable development, they added social justice and human rights. Now, when you add social justice and human rights, then it opened the door for all the Marxists and all the Maoists and all the people championing Dalits and people championing missionaries. So it opened all these doors. And then finally, this United Nations came up with Sustainable Development Goals 2030, which the countries have signed. India has signed, everybody signed. SDG 2030. Now, it sounds very nice, Sustainable Development Goals. But if you start looking at them, there are 17 SDGs. And under those 17, there's a large number of almost 200 more detailed goals. SDG 4 and SDG 6 are the focus of our investigation for this book. These concern education and public health. So if you look at education, so the idea of education that UN is promoting, there is something called comprehensive sexuality education. So we look at what is it. It is not sex education, which is the traditional idea of sex education, meaning you want children to become aware of risks and pregnancy and infections and harassment. So you want to educate them about those things. That is very good, but that is not what this is. This is about enhancing the desires. enhancing the desires from a young child, sexual desires, telling them that you could be a boy or a girl, is your choice. You can choose. Do you feel like being a boy or you would like to be a girl? So you touch yourself, you masturbate, you compare notes, you share with each other. All of this going on in schools, start in Europe in a big way and gone to America and now come to India also. India having all these, we're giving you examples where there are projects, some of them at the state level, some are NGOs. They're all done openly with the blessings of NITI Aayog and these things going on. And they are contrary to Indian values, but it is happening. So the comprehensive sexuality education is about, there is a concept called the human rights of a child, and the human rights of a child includes sexual rights. So so the question is, who defines the sexual rights, and who decides that we are going to teach under the garb of sexual rights, we're going to teach these kind of things. This is not our values. Maybe in Sweden it's good, maybe somewhere in France it's fine, but this is not our values. So do we have a say? When they debated these SDGs, more than 100 countries did not have any say in it. They were allowed to, but they are too poor. They don't have any money. They can't sit and hire consultants. Many of these African countries and all these kind of countries, they did not even have any input. Not that it was banned, but they have no bandwidth left. They don't have enough educated people who are sophisticated to protect their interests. So these things were put through committees. Bill Gates organization they funded a large number of consultants. They gave money and they put in their kind of ideological consultants. So these SDGs were negotiated mainly by the West and China and a few people. And the rest of the world did not have much say, did not opt to participate with their own positions. And so that's how these things happen. Now, besides the comprehensive sexuality education, there is also global citizenship education. Global citizenship education sounds very nice because I would like my kids to be global citizens. Of course, everybody would. But global citizenship education is basically globalist ideology and downgrading national ideology. So you could say in my country it's like this is our idea, but they want to tell the child what are the globalist agenda that every child should have. So whatever is the definition of sustainability, whatever is the definition of diversity, wokeism, these kind of things are fashionable. LGBTQ plus, trans, these are part of globalist education, that these are globalist programs that have to be supported. And so the law is being changed, and there is pressure to change the laws even in India on these matters. So one of the interesting changes is they want to raise the age of marriage for girls and lower the age for sexual activity, sexual consent. Now, why is it that they want 16 to be the age of sexual consent, but 21 to be the age of marriage? So in those 5 years, sexual consent, sex is legal, but marriage is not legal. Now this is very interesting. Very interesting. Why would you encourage sex 5 years before marriage is legal? So you are actually promoting premarital sex. Their argument is that lowering the sex age is natural. People are like that, but our tradition says there is discipline. That is what yoga is. It's discipline. There is yam niyam. It's just because you feel like it doesn't mean you encourage the child. There is also something called discipline. And they feel that the reason for raising the age is because then, there'll be fewer children. Many of these people won't have a child, or they'll have fewer children. So to lower the birth rate, you discourage marriage and you delay marriage. And then in the meantime, those teenagers, you encourage them to be sexually active, and you teach them a lot about birth control and about abortion. And so you teach them how to create a problem and then solve it. Okay. So that's not, so we did not have enough say. Our education people, this was all pushed down through WHO. And that is what Trump has decided to defund WHO. USA is no longer funding WHO. They've exit the WHO, cancel their membership to get the point across that this is not our values. So the UNESCO is the one that's bringing the educational wokeism into India from the UN side and various other NGOs. And the WHO is bringing a whole lot of health policies in this regard. And then there is a third entry point is legal. A lot of legal. Tomorrow I'm addressing a group of people in the Delhi who are Supreme Court advocates who invited me to talk about this book from a legal point of view. And the next day I'm talking to Delhi University law faculty also about this book, and I'm looking forward to it. I think they are the right people who understand logically what's going on. So hopefully we'll get some traction there. So these are the three entry points for this wokeism: education, health, law. And that's how we are disrupting our civilizational idea. And somehow we don't have the IKS people pushing back. I mean, they're just busy writing some IKS in a corner, but they have to be part of these committees. I don't see NITI Aayog when they are bringing in these kind of ideas. I don't see them bringing IKS people and saying, okay, let's give them a Indian response. At least be present. I've tried to be present, but not welcome. See, so that's why we write a book, because then they can't ignore. So they ask me often कि आप ये जो बहुत डिटेल में प्रॉब्लम को एक्सपोज किया है प्राइवेटली बता दो. Why to go public? I say, because you don't have any time for me privately. I mean, you're so busy and you don't want to listen to all these things. So we write books. And the books do very well. Then there's a big ruckus, and maybe that's how we have to solve problems, because the forums are very protected. We were discussing this morning with Ratanji also. The access is not that open for people like us who are independent thinkers to say, okay, we would like to share our findings with people and at least get a hearing. It's not very easy. So the idea of diversity is rather one. You see, diversity, our tradition says, is natural. So there are LGBTQ plus, there are LGBTQ trans people is natural, but it's a small percentage. It is not the mainstream. Whereas the woke idea is that LGBTQ plus and the trans should be made mainstream. So to encourage little children to go for it. Encourage children to experiment and go for it. If they want to go for it, give them the medicines, the chemicals, the drugs to block puberty and change their gender artificially, even surgery, and don't even tell the parents, because that is why the title of the book, Who's Raising Your Children? So there are cases where parents have gone and protested, and they've been told, you don't have the right, because we are authorized by the government to raise your child, and this is the law. These are the child rights. We are teaching him that he has a right. He may become a girl. If he wants to become a girl, we'll encourage that. And that's his right. And you are the parent. And if you don't listen and don't get out of the way, we can prosecute you for violating his rights, and we can take the child away. So we've given an example of an Indian family in Utah where they decided to pack their bags and come back to India because the child was being taught these things, and they were very concerned. Unlike many parents who are very busy, don't even know, they were very concerned. They went and negotiated, discussed, and spoke to the school authorities and didn't get anywhere. Finally, the school authorities sent them warning that if you keep interfering with your child's education, the point is that you don't know, we are the experts, we are teaching how we are supposed to teach, and you're talking about your values and all that, then we are going to take the child away from you. And once they do that, then it's very difficult to get the child back. So they packed their bags and came to India, just ran away because they didn't want that happening. So there are, these are all examples with data which we've cited. So the question, who is raising your children? Beneath that, there is a question, who owns your children? Do you really own your children, or somebody else has got more rights over your children? So that's a complete upside down of the Indian's value system, because for us, family is very important. So you see, you may want to know, why is woke like that? Why is woke like that? I'll tell you. Woke is an outgrowth of Marxism. Marxism wants to destroy society because they feel they liberate the underclass. Society is abusing the workers, the poor, the underclass, because the rich, the elites, the powerful people are dominating, and this can only be solved with violent revolution. So according to Marxism, every society has oppressors and oppressed. The people who are oppressing and those who are being oppressed. But Marx was very careful. He just said this is economic. He said there's no religion involved here. There is no race involved here. There's no gender involved here. It's only economic. So that was the limit of Marxism, is economic theory. But then in the middle 1900s, during World War II, Marxists expanded, and they came up with something called cultural Marxism. And they said that Marxism should also apply to the cultural means of production, like Bollywood, Hollywood, these education, religion, the things that are cultural are also controlled by the elites. They are also oppressive. They are oppressing the downtrodden. So cultural Marxism expanded beyond economics. But still race was not there. And some of these cultural Marxists came to the United States after World War II. They were in Columbia University, they were in Berkeley, places like that. And so the cultural Marxists who were in Berkeley, during the 1960s, they had race in America, blacks, whites, race riots. And they realized that now if we add race to the Marxism, we can get the blacks into the Marxist idea. So they added race, and now Marxism expanded to also include race oppression. But still, it was not full wokeism. Wokeism started in the current form when, there was 9/11, Muslims were being, hit back in America, which is sad because you can't blame everybody for what some people have done. So, but anyway, there was a big attack against Muslims, so they had to fight back and change their profile. And a lot of money came from the Middle East to fund, American universities and think tanks and media and educate them about Islam. Islam is great and all that. So in that, they came up with this idea that the most receptive American people for, supporting Islam as oppressed were leftists in universities. So the leftists in universities got a lot of funding from Middle East to support this idea that, you should be pro-Palestine, they are oppressed, Israelis are oppressors. And then Kashmir Muslims are oppressed and the Indian state is oppressor. This became a very big thing in all these Ivy Leagues, liberal kind of things. And from there, they got into the Democratic Party. There is something called the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. They believe in all this. So the Marxism now has economic Marxism, cultural Marxism, racial Marxism, and Muslims. So now all these campaigns against Islamophobia. Islamophobia means that, if you criticize Islam, they'll call you Islamophobia. In some places, you can get thrown in jail, like in England. They can throw you in jail. So much for free speech and all that. But there are not same laws against Hinduphobia. So this is why I argued that if there's Islamophobia, there's Hinduphobia. So my senator in New Jersey was supporting a bill in the US Senate to make Islamophobia a criminal offense. So I protested. I said you should also say Islamophobia, Hinduphobia, Jewish phobia, Christian phobia, Buddhist phobia, every phobia. Why only Islamophobia? So there was enough ruckus that he dropped. Because he was going to make a big case out of this. So you have to fight this like that. You have to fight. So I didn't fight by saying, no, Muslims are bad. We have a right to Islamophobia. I didn't do that. I did the other way around. I said, good, we should not have Islamophobia, but we should also not have phobia against any other religion. It should be all the same. And the US Constitution gives that equality. And they had no argument to that, you see. So Muslims became a protected category in the woke thinking. And then Dalits came. Some of the woke champions in these Ivy Leagues are Dalits from India. They brought Harvard and all these places, brought a lot of these Dalits in Columbia and Princeton. They brought all these Dalits to become like big voice. And so they are influencing the US laws and the US media and all this. When you wonder why are they talking about it, it's our own people sitting there who are paid to do this. And they are enjoying. So then came LGBTQ. We are oppressed also by the people who are heterosexual. Because, you see, the theory is that society, there's logic to it. So let's appreciate them. There's logic to it also. That the rules of society, the structures of society are made by the elites for their own benefit. So if they made certain constitution, ideas of religion, ideas of family, these are going to protect the male-dominated, upper caste people, heterosexual people. It's meant for them, and they are the chauvinists. And so the Marxist idea is that you have to overthrow these structures. You have to dismantle all these structures in order to liberate the people. So that's the logic to it. Okay. Now, the point is that according to us, according to our idea, LGBTQ have a right, absolute right. They have to function how they want to function. But it is not that everybody should become LGBTQ, or we should encourage other people to become LGBTQ, and we should expand LGBTQ numbers in order to make them feel comfortable. It is not a clash. It's not a conflict. It is not a quota system. You see, so it is not a quota system that now you have to have a special privilege for LGBTQ. So, you tell somebody, oh, you become LGBTQ, you get through easier, you get through the IAS exam, or some corporate will have to hire you or something like that. That is the DEI. That is the problem. The DEI people are encouraging, bringing in these kind of things, race, religion minority, sexual minority, caste minority, etc. And guess who's the latest group entering this? We are oppressed. Khalistanis. Khalistanis in Canada have already convinced the government that they have a certain fast track for refugees who are in threat, whose lives are in danger in their country. So like the Rohingyas got quota. So Khalistanis they are part of the fast track. If you are a Sikh, and you want to sponsor somebody from your village, it's like that. Because there are lawyers who already made the case that he comes from village and they are oppressing these Sikhs out there. Actually, the Sikh farmer is the richest farmer. It's no problem. And I keep telling the Khalistani Gurdwara walas that what is destroying the Sikhs in your villages is drugs. And it's Christian conversion. And the World Council of Churches has said that by 2030, there will be more churches in Punjab than Gurdwaras. And there will be more people attending church every week than Gurdwaras. And this is their goal by 2030. And you people are sleeping. That is your real threat. You want Khalistan, but it will be Khalis ho gaya, empty. There will be no more Khali ho gaya. There will be no more Sikhs there. Sikhs are gone. What Khalistan you make? Stupid people. I tell him that your real problem is not I was giving a talk in Canada, and some group was sitting there. They started shouting, down with RSS. I said, I'm not an RSS guy. And they said, they're Sikhs. Somebody brought all of them. So then I told the host, I said, look, I'll walk out because I don't like this. I came here, you can ask me tough questions, I'll answer them, I enjoy that. But let's be civilized about it. What's all this going on? So he told them to keep quiet. And he asked one person, you just explain what is your point. So that guy said that RSS is destroying us, and Modi is destroying us, and India is destroying us, and this and that going on. So I said, can I answer, please? So then he told them, you keep quiet, let him at least answer. So I told them that the number one problem is drugs, and none of them even knew that, these young fellows shouting. I said, that is not brought by RSS or anybody. This comes from Pakistan. And your Gurdwara walas should be responsible to do something about it, and they have done nothing about it. Maybe they are part of the criminal mafia or whatever it is going on. But the point is, your society is being destroyed by drugs and not destroyed by some Hindu upper caste trying to bring Hinduism and convert them. And the conversion is going to Christianity. The biggest church in Asia is in Jalandhar. It is visible from 20 miles. It's a huge thing, biggest. And they are this is in the villages, they're going and converting people like crazy. They are all into drugs. The church provides therapy from drugs to help them out and convert them. And the Gurdwara is not doing this. So this is a real reality. But what is happening is in the Western countries, particularly Canada and Australia, they have convinced the governments that we are oppressed. And it's part of the DEI quota hamara hona chahiye. So the DEI is a big scam. You have to understand that our people are sleeping. We just accepted all this DEI. So now, by the way, Trump sent one plane of illegal Indians in USA back. Most of them are Sikhs. Most of them caught in Gurdwaras because there's a whole smuggling thing going on. They come to Canada and then they smuggle into India, into USA. So anyway, these are some of the topics mentioned here, and I will just close because I want questions. So I think there is a colonization by index. Indexes that are being used to rate us are not necessarily, they're used to control us and rate us, because if you don't behave, your rating will be low, you will not get funding, you will not get investments, you will not get contracts. All this is a way to manage our thinking. So civilizationally, these indexes are not very friendly to us, and because we are not the ones making these rules. And then the other thing I want to tell you is RTE, the right to education, biases against Hindus, because whenever there's a government policy, let's say comprehensive sexuality education or global citizenship education and things like that, and LGBTQ laws and whatnot, it exempts the minority religions, minority educational institutions. They can say, it's against our religion, we don't want to have it, no questions asked. But non-minority means have to obey. So we are subject to these globalist agendas, and the minority religions are not. So there is an asymmetry in there. And I also want to close by saying that artificial intelligence is being used in all this, is weaponizing these things, because in some of these schools, it's very fashionable to give them apps. And they have these apps to learn from peers what is the latest trend and this and that. And these apps have got a whole lot of sexuality education, and these woke ideas are spread out. And there is a lot of AI being used to educate, brainwash, make it exciting, make it entertaining, make it fantasy, come up with all these videos, clips and all. They're very personalized. So the new technology of apps and AI and so on is only making this worse, because the parents are, who's raising your children? It's also these apps. It's also the social media. It's also this AI raising. And who controls all that is not our people. It is not somebody in Shingeri Mutt or Kanchi Mutt or Sri Sri or somebody like that, or Sadhguru, or who is sitting and developing these algorithms. They're out of it. I mean, I'm trying to get them into it. That you have to get involved in the training of neural networks. Because right now the neural networks are being trained on Washington Post, New York Times, Wikipedia, what the church produces, what Harvard produces, what Max Miller wrote about India. It's being trained on the ideas of India as written by non-Indians and non-Hindus. That is the training material. So I have a product called Ask Rajiv, AI product. We are developing for 3 years. And the Ask Rajiv product is that I'm turning 75. So I said, I can't just do this Q&A forever. So I'm also training people. I've got trained a couple dozen people to take over and answer these questions the way I answer them. But I'm also developing for the last 3 years a product called Ask Rajiv, where we are using my books as training material to learn, to teach the AI how to answer these questions. So if you ask about some about issue, it's not allowed to go look at some public information, but only my books. And we have, it takes a long time to do this because the underlying large language model is already biased. And we do not have a Bharatiya large language model. People are talking about it, but we don't have it. So whatever product you make, it is built on top of a large language model that came from some Western country, and therefore no matter how much you try to brainwash it and teach it and nuance it about, teach only, reflect only Rajiv's ideas, the point is it's already got some ideas. It's pre-educated, you know. But you look at the vision of Qatari government. They are developing a large language model. It's called Falcon, you know, the bird, desert bird. Falcon is a large language model where it is trained on Arabic. All the Arabic literature, Islamic literature, Arabic culture, Arabic history. So it's their worldview which this AI system will reflect. And the Chinese are developing where the Chinese point of view. You can't criticize their policy on Tibet or this or that. This AI system is like you're talking to a Chinese, very intelligent person. And that's the AI system. And of course, the Western ones are Western. So we do not have a Bharatiya large language model. I have a whole project report. It costs a lot of money, but I have a whole project report to do a Sanskrit large language model. That will be based on Sanskrit categories. And you'll be able to do interaction in any language, English, Hindi, whatever. But underlying engine will be a Sanskrit engine. And so the understanding of knowledge, meaning, will be based as per our Shastras. Now this, I've got it going around, nobody interested in these things, you know. So this is our problem. We are colonized by AI. We are colonized by large language models also. And so Ask Rajiv is just an attempt to counter that. So that's that. I just want to close here and thank you very much for listening.